Good evening. Welcome to WTTS Radio as we bring to you a special show tonight called Break the Silence. I'm here with a special panel tonight of ladies who will be going in to tell you different stories of how they experience domestic violence rather themselves. We have to my right,
Miss Jones.
Miss Leah,
Miss Lynn.
Miss Charmayne, Miss Lola.
and you can join us right here all night on WTTSradio.com till 10 o'clock as we talk about this show. First topic we're going to do: abusers show warning signs.
Abusers do show warning signs. Some of the signs are isolation. They isolate their victims from their families and friends. They are controlling, need to know where you are, want to text you all the time, call you all the time, want to know where your whereabouts are. So those are some of the signs.
There are some that can hide it very, very good. That can carry on a new relationship and not show any signs until they've really got you under the gun, where you trust them and you know how they operate, and then all of a sudden here comes the, oh, where have you been? Oh, you don't love me anymore. And that's when all of the signs start to show. But at that point, you trust them so much, you're like, oh, well, maybe it's just a phase he's going through or anything like that. So I think it depends on the person's personality of whether they show their signs early on or if they hold back for a little bit.
Is it easier to recognize those signs, though? Like, having been in, some of you guys have been in the situation, are those signs easily recognizable? Because, constant text messages, you might be like, oh, he's into me, he loves me, or, whatever the case may be. So, would you know that is possibly what that is?
I think that's a good point you made. Mm-hmm. A lot of times the signs are flipped in a sense in terms of its impression upon you. Most people feel like, oh, he cares. Right. He's thinking of me. He's showing affection and love. So a lot of times it's misinterpreted as love and affection, but really it's an onset of control. Yeah. And so it's hard to recognize the difference. Yeah. So that's a good question.
Yeah, especially when it's something that you're not used to. You're used to somebody not paying you attention. Absolutely. If you're in a relationship where someone isn't paying you attention at all, and then you get that kind of attention, you feel that's love. Exactly. So,
that's right.
So my question is a lot of times are some of the signs confusing, or they get confusing, from, I guess, a person who, a normal person who, isn't, abusive, or, I guess, if being me, I'm a regular person, right. Can they get misconstrued?
I think it's a multifaceted type of thing, meaning it goes back to what Lola was saying. Some abusers hide it. So generally it's hard to really tell, depending, say if you've been in a previous abusive relationship before, you may be able to see the signs. If you haven't, depends on the relationship that sometimes women have had, or young girls with their dad. So they may not see it or might not think, that it's a big deal at first. Sometimes you have substance in there, so they think, oh, he's just drunk, or, he didn't mean it. Mm-hmm. So a lot of times it's just so many different factors that can weigh in that really minimize the reality that you get ready to be in a domestic violence relationship.
And to piggyback what Miss Leah was talking about, I think that if it's not apparent to you when you're in the relationship, somebody around you has gotten the signs.
That's right.
Somebody knows what's going on, and you might not believe them right offhand because you're like, oh, he loves me. It's only once. It won't happen again. But somebody in your family or one of your friends knows the signs, and they've been telling you this for a long, long time. So when it actually happens, they've been standing there telling you this information the entire time. So somebody knows around you.
Yeah. Oh, yeah.
Okay, so what are the initial, the initial shock when they occur? Like once you start to see the signs, what are normally your responses?
You have some people who are really naive about the actions and things. Even when you have family and friends tell you that this is going on, when you're in that relationship and you're so wrapped up in it, you're not going to believe everything that somebody's saying to you.
And
So
it's always downplayed as, oh, they're hating, they're
Yes.
jealous, they don't
Yes.
have a man and things like
True.
that. But
Right,
that
right.
They don't
nobody should know
understand.
your whereabouts from the time you get up until the time you sleep. You
Right.
know I'm at work.
Right.
You don't have to call 15 times to know that I'm at my desk.
Yeah.
That's just, it's an initial shock. You be like, okay, well, maybe they care about me.
Right.
But then you're like, wait a minute, why are you calling me so much? And it's just like, I've been in that situation before. I kind of can tell, like, wait a minute,
on.
Exactly.
Mhm.
this is a bit much.
Mm-hmm.
What signs have, I guess, any of you experienced other signs or whatever?
Well, for me, I would say like the initial kind of in the signs. I came from out of abusive childhood. So my dad was a police officer in D.C. and my mom was a stay-at-home mom. So I went through a lot of verbal and emotional abuse because when my mom was pregnant with me, my dad wanted her to have an abortion. And so when she went and had it, I still grew. So for the rest of the marriage, he didn't talk to her. And so she took it out on me through the childhood. And so being abused as a child and then meeting someone who was abusive to me, like on my first date, I got punched in the face by my boyfriend at the time, then became husband, because I was looking at somebody out the window. But for me, because I was familiar to abuse, he said he loved me after and hugged me, whereas my mom didn't after the physical abuse. So I stayed with him. So for me, the initial shock was, wow, I wouldn't have expected that on the first date. But because I was familiar to abuse and he said he loved me, that made me stay, because it was the lesser in a way of two evils. But because the abuse didn't seem odd to me, but the fact he loved me is what drew me in.
Right. Because it was different.
It was different.
Right.
Mm-hmm.
So I think that a lot of times, yes, I was shocked that he would do that because for me, I was just happy to be with him. Finally, somebody to love and care for me. But that would have been a warning sign right there when he punched me to go.
Right.
But no, I believe that he grew up in abusive homes. I thought we had something in common.
Right.
I tried to understand him. He tried to understand me. But really, in a sense, two emotionally depraved people getting ready to be in a horrific cycle, to be honest, but more so me than him. But being a batterer, being that way is definitely not easy either in a sense. It's bad you have to feel bad about yourself to be beating on somebody all the time and treating someone that way. There's no good that you can feel within yourself. So.
I guess, for me growing up, I used to see my mom going through different situations and stuff like that. And initially it was rough to watch.
Yes.
But once you see it over and over and over again, it's like it's normal. Yeah. And then you come home and you see this and you see this, this going on, and then one day it may be verbal, and then later on it may get physical, and it just becomes normal. So,
I think with, like she said, it's multiple facets to domestic violence, especially especially when children are around, because one day, like you said, it could be verbal, another day it can be violent. But I think on top of all of it, that makes it okay and makes it normal in the family is that it's sugar coated.
Absolutely.
It's sugar coated because I can be hit one day, the next day we're at Chuck E. Cheese having a good time. So I think it's very sugar coated, especially when whoever is the abuser has that much control and the victim is naive to what is going on. So I think with the sugar coating, it makes it a little bit normal. It gives domestic violence that normalcy.
That's true.
In the relationship, with people just covering it with gifts and lavish goods and everything. So
I think with me, when I initially saw it, I was shocked.
Right.
More so because this is the same person that you see acting so normal, on a regular day, and then to see this person go from 0 to 100 as as a child, you like, who is this dude right here? Like, where did this come from? Or but at the same time, the cycle. If you see a person, steady going and dealing with it, regardless of what this person is doing, and they're not doing anything about it, you think it's okay. You have anything?
I mean, I don't. I haven't been in the situation, and I haven't known anybody in the situation, but I do agree that at some point it becomes normal. Like, you know, and I can't help but to think about Chris Brown and Rihanna, and you know how he says how, you know, he grew up and he saw his mother go through it, and you know it was something that she dealt with all the time. I don't know if he had ever, you know, displayed any violence in any prior relationships, but you know, when I guess when that's kind of embedded in you, at some point, you know, I don't know, but it's a cycle.
And
It's like, how do you break that cycle?
It has to be, because I know for me, I have smaller children. I have 2 sons and I have a daughter. I don't want my son seeing his dad hit me and him growing up thinking that it's okay.
Right.
And I don't want my daughter thinking that, okay, a man that beats you, you can't say, okay, he beat me because he loved me. Not happening. So you have to say, okay, enough is enough. I refuse for my son to grow up thinking that it's okay for you to just, if a woman gets out of line and, you know, cusses you out, you can just smack across the face and that's just it. Absolutely not. And I don't want my daughter to think, okay, well, I can't. Exactly. It's okay to just sit there. This man has, you know, you're controlled. You know, you don't work. He works. He has all the money. He holds the purse strings. You have to stay with him and he beats you, so you have to put up with it. No. A lot of people think that they can't get out. They have no way to go, no way to turn, nothing. So sometimes you just got to step out on faith and it's like, look, it's going to be either me or it's going to be you.
Yeah.
So you got to choose yourself.
Right. And I agree with you. My question is it, I guess, rather easy to notice these signs, you know, when they initially occur?
No.
Not when it's new to you.
Not when it's new to you.
No. I think you make excuses for it when it initially occurs.
And that's the first thing you should notice if you're making excuses. Oh, well, no, he's doing that because he's this. Oh, well, no, I don't even worry about it. Or you're brushing it off. It's like you're saying sugarcoating things. That's red flag number 1.
Exactly.
So it's not necessarily a big shock because most of the time, I guess, you don't notice.
You're not recognizing what it is.
You're not recognizing what it's going on. Right.
I mean, I think it would be a shock to think we all have expectations in dating. We meet someone, things we hope or we see in that person that drew us to that person. The shock would come in that they're presenting the abusive behavior or the emotional words or cussing out or punching. You know, I'm thinking this is finally the date of my life and I meet this man, then bam, he punches me. Yeah, that's shocking because you don't expect that when you're dating someone.
Welcome back, guys, and thank you for tuning in to Breaking the Silence, a special episode on WTTSradio.com. We're going to jump into the next segment, and I want to know which is worse, physical abuse or emotional abuse?
I think that goes almost hand in hand because the physical, you have the scars visibly, but the emotional, the mental, it wears you down over decades. And especially when you have low self-esteem, it's the worst. It is when you're in a domestic relationship, a domestic violence relationship. When you have low self-esteem, it's like this is you know, you have somebody who cares and loves you. You feel like you can't get any better. You feel like there's nobody else out there that would do things for you, and it goes hand in hand. It really does. You can't. It's almost like you can't have one without the other one.
That's true. As far as the self-esteem, if you have somebody say, "Oh, I love you," but then the same person that's telling you that they love you, is telling you ain't gonna be nothing without me.
Exactly.
Nobody's gonna want you. You're ugly. You're fat.
And
you're
start
this.
to believe
and
it.
you start to believe it. So it's just like brick by brick. It's like a monkey on your back, and it's like you can't get out of it because you're like, well, damn. And maybe you start to believe it.
Exactly.
Well, maybe that is true.
I do think that emotional abuse is worse than physical. And I only say that because I've been through an emotionally abusive relationship. Wounds heal over time, you know, black eyes heal, you know, scars heal and everything like that. But it takes you through therapy and having to come to the realization that, you know, discovering your worth is what needs to happen in order for you to get out of an emotionally abusive relationship, which sometimes does not happen for certain people that are victims of it.
Right.
It took me a long time to realize that I was somebody and that I wasn't this ugly, fat, useless person that I was told I was. So it took a long time for me to go through it. And I was going through college at the same time. So, you know, with the stress of trying to get a degree and,
Right.
you know, trying to make sure my family is good at home. And then I got somebody in the back of my mind telling me, oh, you're never going to be anything. I don't know what you're doing here. You're never going to get the degree. It takes a minute for it to process. And then after a while, you're like, well, maybe he's right. Especially if you're having a bad week.
Yeah.
When you're having a bad week
That's
and
true.
nothing's going right, Calf ain't got no food. I ain't got no money to go to the movies with my friends. I ain't got nothing. I don't have nothing to do with nothing right now. And everything is just down and it's going in a downward spiral. It just happens. So I do agree that emotional abuse is a little bit worse than physicality.
I think physical, emotional, just from my perspective of being in a domestic violence marriage, is always hard either way because, and I'll twofold answer, because you never expect it from the person that you hope to care about you or love you. So whether he or she is physically abusing you or emotionally abusing you, yes, the impacts are somewhat different, but it's still, the impact is still great because it's from someone that you don't anticipate to do that to you. And I think that the physical, it has a greater lethality aspect of danger. In other words, if you punch somebody in the head and they hit the ground, they could die. Or, you know, if you punch them in the head and they hit the temple, it's just, to me, the physical aggression can be a greater risk of lethality in terms of the escalation of the abuse. And then it could lead to guns and knives and just different things. I mean, I was dragged on the highway of Central Avenue, beat 7 months pregnant, beat with black eyes, and still had to get up and go to the grocery store with the same man who did all these things. And he walked proudly with me, black eyes and busted lips. So, you know, I had the physical, but also the emotional embarrassment, the shame. How could he do this to me? And truly had no self-esteem from childhood to even then. And I didn't want to lose the only source of love I thought was coming from him. So I think it's a coupled effect. You know what I mean?
Absolutely.
Yeah. I mean, I agree. I mean, you know, I haven't, like I said, I haven't been in the situation, but it seems like the emotional might be harder to come back from.
Exactly.
You know, like when somebody gets in your head, and I mean, and I know just from the regular day to day, you know, people at work or whatever, they say certain things, but somebody's in your head, they're in your head, you know, and like you said, the scars heal. Those things heal. You don't forget them, but they do heal. But when somebody is in your head and can manipulate the way you think and things like that, that's hard to come back from, not in a domestic violence situation. So, you know, being in the situation, it would be that much more difficult.
I think you can't be emotionally abused and not be physically abused. I mean, I know I kind of sound biased, but I had it both ways. So it was like, you weren't going to be anything. And I too had to be shameful, whole face, side of your face swollen. Still had to get up and go to work.
Absolutely.
People staring at you like, what's wrong with their face? What's wrong with this? What's wrong with that? It's just, and I had that, okay, well, nobody's going to want you. While I had the black eyes and the swollen face and everything like that. You're not going to be anything. And, you know, you had to walk around like that. So it's kind of like I had it, you know, both ways. And it took a while for me to know my worth. And it's just like, you have to love yourself.
That's right.
Nobody's going to love you. Nobody knows how to love you but you. It just goes, we have to keep stressing that to our sons, our daughters, everybody. You have to love yourself, because if not, the situation could take a turn for the worse.
That's right.
You have to know that you are loved. If nobody else loves you, love yourself. There's nothing wrong with self-love, because you thinking all this, you know, you're not going to be anything. Well, yeah, you're right. Nobody is going to want me. I look, you know, my face is disfigured. I have bruises all over me. You're right. No one is going to. And then it starts to, you know, sink in, and then you just sit there and wallow in it. Like you said, you can have a bad day that day, and then it just leads to a bad week, a bad month, and just everything is just bad. So we got to break this cycle. I can't stress that enough.
So Why is it that the victims, majority of the times, are the ones blamed for the abuse?
I think it's a misunderstanding. People, I mean, some people are they're very illiterate to what is happening in the relationship. So if you're not in it, you're gonna be like, "Girl, I mopped the floor with him. He wouldn't even touch me like that. I'd be in jail. I'd be locked up. Whatever.
Right.
All this other stuff. He wouldn't touch me like that. I wish he would say something to that. You say all of those things until you get into that situation, and then all of a sudden you're sitting there like, I don't know what to do.
Right.
You know, he's saying this stuff to me, and it's coming from the person that is supposed to be my soulmate, the love of my life, the person that I'm supposed to be with in this relationship, that's supposed to be doing 50-50. And now all of a sudden, he's saying stuff to me that I can't even believe. I can't even wrap my mind around it. So I think that they're very confused about how, you know, people get mixed up into these relationships and cannot get out of it, and then children get involved in some cases. So people just say stuff that they just don't even understand of it. So in my opinion, I think it is a misunderstanding for outsiders, because they don't really see
from the outside looking in.
From the outside looking in,
all
you see is the abuse, you know. So,
but once you in it, you'll be like, well, how do I do this?
It's like,
where am I going to go? And what am I going to do?
Right.
So it's like a double-edged sword. It's like,
absolutely.
My sister, she was involved in something. I had to come over there and rescue her. So she was over there. So I was actually fighting a grown man for my sister to get her out of that situation. So you can't say, oh, well, of course, if your sister's crying or calling you crying, of course, everybody's going to be like, oh, you know, oh, hell no, I'm going to go and see what's going on.
Right.
But you can't always say, okay, well, I would do this. Girl, I'll take a gun, I'll shoot him, I'll do this. You can't always
you don't
say
know
that.
your reaction
Exactly. In that situation. Because a lot of people go off adrenaline.
Exactly.
You don't know, hey, you get the strength of 10 men and you want to just go in the street and fight somebody. You just don't know what you do unless you're put in that situation.
I guess so. You know, being in a situation, why is it that we normal, or people who are, you know, are in the in domestic violence relationships, put up with things that they normally wouldn't do with other people?
Well, I think, in going with the first question too, I think domestic violence is so misjudged. I mean, and mischaracterized. People are judged as if they have a choice. That's why people are less tolerant from the judicial, from the police when they come to the home so repetitively, because they believe you have a choice to leave. You don't have to stay here and put up with that. But the reason why a lot of victims are just not getting up and leaving is because you have the psychological aspect of the low self-esteem, the manipulation, and the, like she said, and the tormenting of the words. And when someone says they're going to kill you, that fear becomes real. It becomes a real intimate presence in your life. And so a lot of times it's easier for girlfriend A to say, oh, girl, you better just pack your stuff and go. It's not that easy. And if you don't have a safe place to go, and if you don't have that long-term economical stability to get out of that environment, leave. You're talking about women packing up kids, going to a shelter, and they coming out of a 5-bedroom home, or family not putting up with it because they've seen you go back and forth. In my case, they don't want the mess at their house. So there are a lot of barriers psychologically, economically. Women are at a higher risk, or anyone leaving a battered relationship, for death, for homicides. A lot of times you're homicides. So there has to be a safety planning. So a lot of times we, as prior victims or victims now standing, they're so judged. I think if we as a corporate America and a society could take the judgment out and bring the support and understanding, we would aid a lot of these victims to safety. And I'm not saying it's to cure all, but take the judgment out. It's not that easy. It's almost like a weight on you when you know, everyone knows their value and that they don't want to be abused. It's hard for a victim to sit there and think, I'm allowing someone to do this. Because deep down, your own self-worth, you know you deserve better. But getting to that better after being battered for so long, and the longer you're in it, it's hard.
It's hard, especially if you have children.
Yes,
you
it's
have
hard.
to pick up everything and move them. The house that they know, everything they know, the bed that they lay in, the room that they go to, it's hard for you to say, okay, well, you know what? This is it. I've had enough. Let's pick it up. We're going to go someplace else. I mean, it takes a while. Everybody always say, well, girl, you should just leave. But
It's not that easy.
if they don't have any family, where they going to go?
Right.
If the shelter is full, where they're going to go? If they don't have a car,
Absolutely.
don't have a job, don't have the education, where they're going to go?
It's hard to leave.
They don't
them
have
to
the confidence and
unknown.
self-esteem and the strength. Sometimes you're so beat down. You don't have the
Mhm.
strength.
You just feel you have to
Mentally,
sit there and
emotionally.
take it.
Yes.
It's easier to just sit in it.
Stay.
It's easier to just stay
You don't want
where
any more
you
problems, you know?
are. Yes, especially if they are the ones that are so-called taking care of you.
Mhm.
Exactly.
If they're providing for you and your children,
Makes
if
it
you
even
have
harder.
a family,
hole.
it's even harder because it's like now you have to get a job. Now you have to provide. Now you have to be the
Right.
sole provider for
And
your
you have
children.
to figure it out.
You have to
You
figure
have
it
to
out.
figure it out.
And
Silently
then,
figure
if
it
you're
out.
hiding
Exactly.
it from your
Without them
family,
know.
if you're hiding it and they don't even know what's going on, it's even harder because once that comes out, now it's like, oh my gosh, why didn't she say anything? Or
Right.
what happened? How did she let that get so far? It's easier to just sit in something until it breaks you, and then you have to make a decision for it.
Right.
I guess, me, being in that profession and I've, came to people's houses and, seen them involved in various different situations. They'll leave for the moment or leave
Right.
for the night or
Mhm.
leave for
Mhm.
the weekend or whatever. But it's a routine. I
That's
always
right, yep.
find myself
Back
back
at
there
the
knocking on the door.
right.
And I often wonder, like, at what point is enough enough? I've seen the bruises. He's been to jail. We're right back here again. At what point do you get tired?
Because as the victim, you feel sorry. Oh, I want my family. Oh, I want this. Oh, I don't want him to be locked up. Oh, don't take him away in handcuffs. You have to. It's tough.
It's the
You
cycle of
have-
violence. That's exactly what it
You
is.
have got to say enough is
Yes.
enough. I mean, I can't speak for everybody has their own situation, but I was pregnant with my second child. I just got laid off.
Mhm.
My car broke down. Did not have anything. I got jacked up with my baby in belly. And I was like, you know what? The hell with this. He went to work. I packed up everything I could and left.
Wow.
And it took me 3 years to wrap my brain around that and to say, you know what, this is it. I can't do it anymore. When you actually see yourself or been told I'm going to kill you, or you visualize yourself, well, I did see myself actually, people at my funeral, people were crying.
Mhm.
I know I had on a flower dress and I was just like, whoa, it just seems all
It's
too
too
real.
real.
It
Mhm.
seemed too real to me. I had to go. I didn't have a plan. I didn't have money. I just had to go.
It's like one day something just clicked.
Something just clicks in you. That's why you see it in the movies all the time.
Right.
People packing up in the middle of the night. You saw it on What's Love Got to Do with It? Packing up, moving the kids in the middle of the night. You just packing up. You just have to go.
Mhm.
You don't think about, okay, plan A, plan B. You just go. Not everybody is strong enough or have the means to do that. So it's like, what do you do? What is there for? What type of vehicle is there for people that can't go, that want to go?
Well, my question is, so what if you have people constantly in your ear, giving you that advice, telling you that, that you can do better, telling you that, we're here for you, when you're ready to come out. You have the support system. But you
will
still
probably
won't-
have to get to a point. Like
You have to
everybody
believe
has
us.
a breaking point.
Yes.
Exactly.
You
That
know,
rock
you
bottom.
have to. People are in your ear all the time about everything.
Mhm.
But until you realize it and
Mhm.
until you reach that point, I can imagine that you're not
Right.
gonna, people are always gonna have something to say. But you have to. It's not until you come to your point and you're just like, I can't do this anymore. And then you're realizing, I guess, what it is that they were saying and the
That's
truth
true.
to it and things like that. But yeah, I mean, and once that point is reached, but if you can still tolerate it
Yeah.
in a sense,
Tolerance.
yeah.
Tolerance. It is tolerance.
It's
Yeah.
also like I
Tolerance.
was once told, you have to be broken, completely broken.
Mhm.
So once for truly be made whole. And once you get to that point where you're at your lowest, you have to get to that lowest point
Mhm.
where you're completely broken, where you're like, okay, it's enough.
Mhm.
Because if I don't leave, I'm not going to make it to the next
That's right.
day. You have to get to that point. If you're not at that point and you're constantly having people say things to you, it doesn't matter what anybody says to you. You have to get to a point where you believe it for yourself.
Absolutely.
You have to.
It's that old saying, you can lead a horse to water,
Exactly.
but you can't make it
Exactly.
drink. And I mean, with me, and I'll just, share mine personally. It came down to a point where I'm sitting in a room with a switchblade. And it made me, it's either me or him. Because if I leave this earth, he's going to win. And I'm not going to let that happen.
Right.
That's where it comes in. And my tolerance dropped so far down that I was allowing him to say anything to me. Now, I'm not going to be sitting in here trying to figure out whether I should take it or leave it. That's when I finally reached my breaking point, when I was just like, I'm not going to do this. I'm not going to come to that point where I'm thinking about something that goes against everything that I personally believe in. So no, I need to make that decision to move past this and move on. 3 years for me as well. And when I say I'm done, I meant that. I meant that. I'm done.
Yeah.
People say it all the time in the relationships. I'm so done. I'm so done. I'm going to move out of here. I can't take it no more. No. When I said it at that moment, I believed it.
Good.
Because I believed it. Not anybody else. It wasn't for anybody else to believe what I was saying, that I'm done. You can believe whatever you want. But when I say it and I take it in myself, that's when I knew it was a wrap.
So I suppose it's easier. Well, not easier. It's harder to leave, when there are children involved, or
Absolutely.
you have children, with this person or whatever.
Absolutely. It's hard. It's hard. It's hard that that you, even if you do break up, you're still going to have to see this person.
Right.
But after a while and lots of, prayer and things like that, that particular person, we can now actually have a conversation. We can actually now talk. We actually talked one-on-one, and we were young, not saying that that's a reason or that's an excuse, but not knowing how to handle your emotions. You have this family now, and you have all of these emotions going on, high strung, and you have a strong personality. That can happen. That can, aspect, but it's not an excuse. No, it's no excuse for you to put your hands on anybody.
That's right.
But just like enough is enough. You had to know when I was done, I didn't call anybody. I didn't say anything. I just moved. And that was it. When I was done, I was done. And I said, I'm not going to do this anymore. So, and it's very hard because, say, for example, if you have somebody that you have kids with, you're going to have to be in that see that person at least for the next 18 years. So you're going to have to come across that person. So it's like you find a way to coexist or you don't. Because whether or not your situation, the parent situation, those kids have to be raised.
That's right.
So everything else, my kids came first. So whatever you wanted to do, threaten, that's fine. Do you. I'm raising your kids over here. So it takes a lot. It takes growth for you to get past that. A whole lot of growth.
Hi guys, and welcome back to Breaking the Silence. It's your girl, Miss Leah. We're going to go ahead and get into this next question. I want to know, how does domestic violence affect your children? And Miss Jones, I kind of am going to pass this over to you.
It affects those babies because they repeat what they see. Example, if you see your mother getting hit, you might want to go to school and hit your classmates. You see chairs being thrown, you're going to be inclined to throw chairs across the classroom. I've lived it. I know. They go by what they see. That's why they say parents are the first example that the children get. So yes, it's going to affect them. You're seeing your mother crying. Little boys, with children in general, but especially little boys, do not like to see their mother cry. It's just something that, by the hands of someone that they know or someone that they love or look up to. No one wants to see their mother cry. And girls, you have to set that example because, yes, it affects them. They'll think, okay, well, a man does not love me if he doesn't beat me. And we have to teach our little baby, we have to teach our girls that that's not love. You have to love yourself. If it's a baby boy or baby girl, you have to love yourself first. Because if not, then just like I said, you have to affirm your children. every day because you don't want the streets to affirm it.
Right.
You don't want someone else saying, well, you're not going to be anything. Well, come over here. Let's do this. Well, come over here. Let's do that. No, that's not right. And it goes just both ways. You have to set the example. It's not right for, your mother to walk around with black eyes. It's not right for your father to, curse out your mother, or your mother to hit your father and break stuff over his head. It's a repetitive cycle. I grew up in a household like that. Every Friday night, everybody would get drunk. It was the fish fry Fridays at my house. Absolutely. Yes. Fifth, lick, everything. And it ended in a fight. Police coming. And as a child, you say, oh, well, on Friday,
that's the turn
what's that? Exactly. Well, what's that? I mean, it could lead to drinking. It could lead to drugs. And then you think, that's how I'm supposed to conduct myself when I get that age. Exactly. That's how you that's your fun. Exactly. So when you grow up saying that, you could either go the same way and say, okay, it's Friday, let me get loose.
Right.
And then you wind up fighting in the street and then the police are called. Or you can say, you know what? That's not my idea of fun. I don't like the aftermath. I don't like, my mother crying. I don't like my father getting hauled off in handcuffs, or your mother getting hauled off in handcuffs and your father crying. It goes both ways. So you have to set the example for the babies. You have to, because it will affect them. It may not affect them now, but as they get older and as they grow up and come into their own, it will affect them.
And it goes into that cycle.
Exactly. Over and over and over again.
Right. Yes, ma'am.
I think it affects the children as we see in society now, how, especially if you have male sons in the home, how if their mother's being beat, usually boys are not going to allow their mothers to be beat. And so we're seeing now how children are being murdered trying to protect their parents.
Right.
So it is affecting them. I mean, they're part of the cycle. They're hearing it, especially in your teenage boys. I mean, absolutely, they're being put in the middle of that cycle. And I'm not here to judge the parent per se, but I'm just saying that the kids are adversely being affected emotionally. Also, we'll see it in kids with the bullying cycle. I mean, a lot of times they'll take their aggression out on their classmates at school, not really understanding what's going on. The kids are being suspended, but it is probably attributed to their behavior at school, what they're seeing or what's going on in the home. So, I mean, due to the cycle of violence in the home, they're sadly suffering. I mean, there's even statistics out there that says even when a woman's pregnant and she's in that home and violence is going on against her, that has adverse effect against the baby. They're finding out, I don't know to what rate, some of the impact on the children, even the fetus while in the womb. So even when the baby's an infant, not being able to visually see it, but internally
feeling stress. Stressful environment. Stress can actually kill you. I mean, babies can feel it. They can sense. That's why they say children are good judges of character. If you hold your arms out to a child and they don't want to go to you, chances are you're not a good person.
Right. I mean, they've seen the impact in the cognitive sense. So
Exactly.
Right.
Affects them.
Charmayne, you want to offer your feedback?
I just want to say, with especially with girls, you have some girls that see things like that going on in their home, and then they turn wanting to dress a certain way, and then they want to attract the older man, like a father figure, and things like that, and it's something that they're used to seeing in the home. So usually when you have like an older male come into their life and they get in a relationship with them, it's like, okay, the older male feels that they can control the younger female. And that a lot of times, I've seen it happen quite a few times. A lot of times with the older men, when they feel like they have a grip on the female, they can control them. They can do whatever they want to them. They can say whatever they want to them. I mean, it definitely affects the kids. It starts at home. Everything starts at home. Yep. Everything.
And you are under the microscope.
Absolutely.
Everything you say, everything you do.
They are watching.
They are watching you.
Kids have a habit of picking up on everything. They even know when you had a bad day. Oh, absolutely.
Sponges.
Exactly.
They pick up on good and bad. So
that's right.
Like, how was your day? Like, why are you not smiling? They know when you're not yourself. So it's just like, you got to be mindful. Like I said, I have boys and girls. So I have to walk a very fine line. Because if I sleep over here, my oldest will be like, well, where you going? Well, what you doing? What's going on? And my daughter be like, Mom, what's going on? So it's just like they are affected by it. And you will be surprised at what they remember and what they hold on to. Because they might come. My son came out a couple years later. I was thinking, this is over with and done. Well, Mom, remember that time that in the living room and everybody was in there and then the police? I was like,
You remember that?
exactly. Like, you remember that?
Like, wow.
And then that's when it hit, you got it like, hey,
Mhm.
they remember everything. They may not say anything.
Right.
They may not show anything, but they remember.
Right.
And then you also have people who were brought up in a certain era where they say, well, this is what you're supposed to do as a female. This is what you're supposed to do as a male. Don't make the male mad. Don't do this. Don't do that. Or this will happen. If this happens, it's okay. That's what they're supposed to do. No, it has to, the cycle has to stop at some point.
That's right.
Right.
It has to stop.
Man,
Especially the older era.
Right.
That's how they were brought up.
Especially the older area. I know back in the day, it was always what goes on in the home
Stays
in the home.
stays in the home.
And
You
nothing
don't
gets
bring
involved.
nobody in your business.
That's right.
If it's going on in here,
Stays
you deal with it. You figure out a way to deal with it. That's your family, and you have to deal with it. On those terms.
But with that older era, the woman very rarely left the house.
Absolutely.
Now
That's
you
right.
have
That's true.
women, we work,
Mhm.
we go out, we get our own money.
Mhm.
And he may go out, and so the show doesn't stop because you got a black eye. So you're going to have to go out there, and people going to ask questions like, what
Right.
happened to you? Where'd you
Right.
get that black eye from?
Right.
Like, what's going on? You dropped the kids off at school.
Mhm.
Trust and believe those social workers at that school
Are
will
paying
make a few phone
attention.
calls.
Yeah.
Mhm.
They're
And you will
definitely
have
paying
somebody
attention.
at your door, or they will say, is everything okay? That's how they slide in. Is everything okay?
Mhm.
Yeah, so you're right. It's a different era. Yeah, my
Pull that
grandmother,
child
she
right
didn't
in our
leave.
office.
Exactly.
Right.
What's going on in your home? And they do it at the hospital.
Kids talk.
Exactly.
yes.
They do it at the hospitals.
Mhm.
Oh, let me take you over here and give you this eye test. They get you right over there and by yourself as a child and say, what's going on in your house?
Mhm.
They do that. By law, they can. That's probable cause.
Absolutely.
They can do that. And if they find out something's going on, yes, you could be in danger of losing your children. That's how that affects them. You may never think, okay, this is between mom and dad. But what's going on with mom and dad is affecting Jimmy. Jimmy can be removed from the home. Then what? Is that arguing worth losing your child or having your child in foster care?
That's true.
And then there's resentment with the child once they get older as well.
Absolutely.
Because you didn't do.
You
your
didn't
job
protect
to
me.
Exactly.
Right.
So you have to protect them at all costs. I mean, as a woman, we always put our children first. There's some
true.
that don't, but you always put the children first because they are our future. When they get led astray, something happened.
But as a child, with me growing up and me watching it and seeing it, even now, I don't even have an argument with my kids. I just can't do it. If I feel like we're at that point where we're about to have some words go back and forth, I'll talk to you later. We're not gonna do this right
Mm-hmm.
here. They
Yeah.
can't see this
I'm the same
because
way.
I've experienced it, and
Right.
it plays back and forth in my head all the time. No matter how old I get, I still see what happened.
Mm-hmm.
So as a result, I have to make sure they don't experience it.
Exactly. When you see stuff, you just bring it back memories. You go, what the day? Jesus. You see things and you said, okay, I've seen this, but when I have kids, I don't want my kids to go.
Right.
through it.
Right.
Every single day. You turn on the TV, you turn on the news. I mean, it's just, you put yourself in that person's shoes. And he's like, well, damn, but this happened in 1980 or this happened in 1990. And it's like, well, damn, I don't want my children to go through the same thing that I went through. It's just, you have to be vigilant of it. I mean, I love my kids no matter what.
Right.
If somebody hurts them, you want to
hurt
see.
me. There you go.
You're going to
I'm
talk to
hurting
me
with it,
behind the
yeah,
glass
right,
because
right.
it's just, it does affect them. And you want them to grow and be productive citizens. So you
That's
have
true.
to instill the values in them now and saying that that's not right. Because the first thing, if they go out and hit somebody, or if they go out and bully someone, well, you failed as a parent.
Exactly.
But they're only going by what they see. So that's not even giving them a chance.
Right. Lauren?
I agree. No, everybody has said everything that I agree with. Children are the future. Parents need to be vigilant of what they do around their children because children are sponges. They absorb everything under the sun. especially when they're between that 2 through 5 range. They're going to see everything and absorb it and then ask questions and be like, what's that? Why is that happening? How did that happen? I don't understand why it's going on and how did this happen? So, yeah, it does affect children in every type of way. Some will, you guard them as much as possible until they become grown. Some will initially go ahead and reenact what they see. Some will be very, very cautious, like you. They will be very cautious as to what they are doing and what they say around their children, and do not want to get in that kind of conflict with their child's mother or their wife or their girlfriend at the same time. So, I mean, it can go any other way, but yeah, be very, very mindful of what you do around children.
I agree. And that even goes to the way I discipline. I don't beat my kids. Everybody's entitled to do things the way that they choose to. I don't.
I was about to say it'd be some black parents that'll disagree on that.
I don't.
Go on out there, give me that switch, boy.
Get a thick one.
Grab that iron cord right there.
Iron cord.
Tell you some stories, but that's a different subject.
That's for the next show.
All these things, that they play a role. They cause you to, live your life differently than what you saw, as a child.
All right, we're going to take a quick commercial break. Join us back here on WTTSradio.com for more Breaking the Silence.
All right, so we are back. Thank you for joining us for Break the Silence on WTTS Radio. And we're going to jump into this next subject. I'm going to throw it to Charmayne. Why is it hard for victims to seek help?
I would have to say because, like we touched on earlier, you don't always have a plan for one. You don't have the resources. Especially if, like for me, I was in an abusive relationship for 4 years. So I could have had the time to plan, but when you have somebody who was literally taking care of every single thing from the time you woke up to the time you went to bed, it's a lot harder to set a plan in motion. It's a lot harder to do that. So I would think that's one of the main reasons. Miss Lynn? I'm sorry.
I think that looking at it from a judicial point is that a lot of times victims have to face the accuser in court. That's the Constitution. The defendant has a right to face his accuser. I think it makes it tough because you're walking in the same courtroom, leaving out, and also the dispositions of the case don't always become favorable where the person is becoming incarcerated or they're seeing like there's minimal punishment being taken place. So a lot of times victims are put right back into society with the defendant. He's walking out of court empowered, like, oh, I just got away with this pretty much. So a lot of times it lessens their desire or will to want to come seek remedy through the court as well. And so, of course, adding to the economic, not enough shelter space, embarrassment and shame, those type of things. It's really imperative for for the communities to really have the support of resources and agencies and shelter space so that the women or men don't have to really be impeded with, staying in these relationships because of the lack of services and resources.
I mean, I would imagine that it would be difficult if you're in denial. If you are not really coming to grips with what's happening. And this is not what it is, and it goes back to the people being in your ear and, telling you all of that. This isn't what it is. No, that's not it. That's not it. I can see, like, if you're in denial about the whole situation.
It's easier to see when you're from the outside.
That's right.
And to piggyback on what you just said, and I'm going to honestly say this, I've never thought about it that way. As many times as I've responded to 911 domestic calls, and, have seen victims, and not one time in my mind has it ever crossed where maybe they don't want to see them in court.
They don't.
Never thought about it. A lot
of times.
And that's big. That's big.
That's huge because one, I mean, it's one thing when I was in a domestic violence marriage, and then so I learned to cut the ringer off the phone. So when he did something, I would call 911, hang up because the police would come. So I could always say the neighbor called 911. But when you're in court, he's hearing you having to testify or stand there against him, and then he walks back out. That adds to the threat or the lethality or more victimization. So that's, I mean, they have to weigh that.
And it makes him feel superior at that point.
Exactly,
And so
especially if he
it makes
gets
him feel
away.
like he's won.
Yes.
And he has, because
To a
he's
certain
able to
extent,
go back out there and, do it again. Maybe
Re-victimize.
to you or somebody else.
Absolutely.
Definitely, probably at that point when you see him in the courtroom, that's mostly when the woman goes back or the victim of abuse
'Cause the fear.
goes back. Because it's like after they see him in court and they probably plead this whole thing of, I didn't really mean it, and it wasn't like that, and then you don't want to see him go to jail because at the end of the day, unfortunately, you still love this person.
Right.
So it's like, once all of that comes to a head, you go back. Because that's all you know at that point. And it's sad that you have to see all of that unfold. And then it goes into the saying, that she's in denial or he's in denial at that same point. You just don't want to come to terms with it. And it's easier to just backtrack.
So is it love that makes you stay through all of this that you're going through?
Not always.
No, I think it's convenience.
Yeah.
I think it's convenience.
Or people think they're in love because
Yeah.
not really
Yeah.
understanding what love is.
Yeah.
I mean, love is interpreted based on how you were raised to understand love. So for some, love is, the accepting of abuse. Love is, whatever you've been taught or ingrained to believe love is. So to them, they still may believe that he loves them, but he didn't mean to do it because of A, B, C, or D.
Okay.
So it's their understanding and perception.
Okay.
And then you also have people who choose not to get any help for the simple fact that we've seen so many cases where people have reached out to get help and they don't get any help and they're sent right back in the same predicament that they're trying to get out of. So you have a lot of people who say, well, what's the point? So they don't do anything. They stay in it.
Or they don't see nothing wrong.
Exactly.
Right.
Like, what are you talking about?
Exactly.
That's normal. That's just how he is.
And that's the denial.
Exactly.
That's just how he is.
Like, it's just how he
accepting of
is.
it.
And it's sometimes it's not even denial. It's just the fact that they have that relationship where it's that love-hate relationship. You fight me, I fight you.
Right. That's
It
just
goes
how it
back and
is.
forth. That's how our relationship is. And as long as we're comfortable with that, we're not going to get the police involved. What's the point in calling them when we're just going to end up back to where we are right now? So, I mean, sometimes it's not even denial. They have accepted that that's how their relationship is.
It should be.
And we're going to move forward with that.
So I have a question. Like, now, is this something that goes on constantly, like every day, or are there like different phases, where these 3 months he may be completely fine, and he may not be showing any signs of any, everything is good.
I think it does have levels to the abuse. I think that if it has happened once, he'll promise not to do it again. And then for about a good 3 months, so to speak, nothing will happen. And then it's just a trigger that'll just go off on him. And he'll just, you'll say something that he'll take a completely different way. And then all of a sudden he's back to this constant mental, physical, and emotional abuse. So I think it is levels to it, but I think as you go along with the levels, it enhances as you go. So it might be a slap here on one level, and then next thing you know, you got broken ribs, you got a black eye, you're in the hospital trying to explain what is going on and why you have so many, scars and bruises and stuff. So I think it is level, but I think it also it gets stronger and more intense as it goes along. As long as you're staying in the relationship.
It's almost like a child when they do something the first time, you have to nip it in the bud right then and there. So it could start with a slap, and then they say, oh, well, she didn't do anything about it. He didn't do anything about it. Okay, well, they must like it. Then it progresses to something else. So it's like a child. You have to nip everything in the bud right then and there.
In the beginning, yeah.
Or it varies with some abusers. It depends also if you have substance in it, as far as alcohol or drugs. It just really depends to me on the abuser as well.
I think to piggyback off of what Charmayne says, I think, and I know we've been talking about, from a female perspective, but from a male's perspective as well, I think it starts with, they like it when their woman is aggressive and they're not afraid to speak their mind. But when she starts to talk about your character or your judgment and start to really pull you down as a man, you're like, wait a minute, I didn't sign up for this.
Right.
And it's even harder for men to come out of it because it's like,
Exactly.
you tell your boy you being abused by your woman, he's like, you've got to be kidding me. Are you serious? You letting that woman walk all over you and stuff. So it's very difficult for them to explain to their friends, their family, their children why they stay with women that at first they liked it, but then after a while it became something that it was not acceptable to them.
I think with men, it's more so of a situation to where you find them in a situation where she's taking care of them. And
Wow.
I'm here and I can't go nowhere. If I leave her, she's my provider. She's, she's been everything. So either I deal with this and keep this good life that I'm living.
Right.
But in, actuality, it's not really that good because my self-esteem is gone.
That's right.
I'm pretty much, I can't do nothing without her. And I don't feel like a man. So as a man, you kind of, I don't think it's more so the physical. It's more so,
the emotional. It's emotional. And which you will not show it because
we don't.
Exactly. Hard to believe, but men are the most emotional. Yes, they are. Beings. They say we're emotional. I think they say we're emotional because we show it. We outlast. We don't care. We'll show it to you regardless. But men hide it so much that when it comes to a point where it builds up and builds up and builds up,
it's a process.
It's a process. But then on the back end, you have men that just hold all this emotions in, and then it turns into murder, suicide.
That's true.
It turns into a homicide. They start beating on their woman.
Right. And it's funny you just said that. And that's exactly what I was just about to say. I can't speak for, I don't know for sure, but I feel like a lot of the violence comes from things built up over time.
Right.
You're constantly building things up instead of verbalizing it.
Yes.
I've taught, I was taught, from my grandparents or whatever, that you have to verbalize. If you don't verbalize it, nobody is going to understand how you feel. They don't even know.
That's right.
Because most of the time, people only see the facade.
Exactly. What you put up.
Right.
What you put up.
Exactly.
Yes. Right. Definitely. So in that case, why is it so difficult to leave the abuser?
Fear. I mean, fear is intimate. Fear is real. Fear is bone chilling. I mean, when my husband told me that Friday I would be dead by that same Sunday that he got murdered, it was more real than any other time he said before. It's just the way the words are spoken, just it's the fear factor. And then two, if you don't have the longevity, be able to, the money and the economic means to stay completely out.
And
you
I
have
mean,
to
it
really
could
be
even
methodical with it.
Right. The stability that the person provides. All the other stuff, they're
Or you wanting it to
wrong.
work. You're thinking, I want
exactly
this to
the
work.
hope that it will one day be better or different.
What about the situation, and this is, I'm going based on what I've seen, where you have this man in this house. He's not working. He's not a provider.
Right.
He's not really doing anything for you, but scaring you to death.
Amen.
So at what point do you say, why am I here?
I think for women, once you figure out how to break down a man and how to get behind the concept of him trying to fear you, once you get that in your head of how, I got him now. I know how to work you. I know how to do this. Once you get that in your brain and you start to build up the confidence enough to get out of there, because at that point you see his cycle, you see his pattern, you see what he does. You see that every time you go to the store and you don't answer your phone, you're going to come home to getting beat.
Exactly.
You see that every time that he takes the car and everything like that, you're not going anywhere. He just leaves you in the house because he doesn't want you to go out with your friends. You're starting to see that pattern. Once you see that pattern in that cycle and a woman processes it, that's when she starts to build up enough confidence and enough character in her life and find out her worth in order for her to move on and start to piece together how she's going to move past this, how she's going to leave him, how she's going to get her children out of this situation, how I'm going to financially work this out for him. That's when she starts to piece it through. So it is hard for her to concept how to leave an abuser, but once she starts to figure out her abuser, once she gets it in her mind how to figure out her abuser and get past that, it's on. You can forget that. It's on.
It's over.
Right. It's a wrap. You can't even tell her nothing because to you might be still abusing her. You might be still in her head. To her, she's just
out.
taking it.
Yeah.
She's just taking it until she's
already out.
Bring it out. Right.
Already out.
Until she has built up enough strength, enough money, and enough courage to move on and go past you. Oh, you can do everything you want. It's not affecting her anymore.
As a whole, I always say this: women are gone long before they physically
leave.
leave.
Absolutely.
That is nothing but
Absolutely.
They're mentally out the door.
That's true.
Before
Way
man
before.
he even knows.
Before he knows.
Right.
Yes.
And you also have to have the male and female get to the point where they accept that it's okay to be alone. You have so many people that have to be in a relationship. They have to have someone. So you have to get to a point where it's okay to be alone.
Yes.
That's another thing.
Yeah.
And I guess that all comes with building your self-esteem.
Yeah,
Absolutely.
knowing your
Knowing
worth.
who you are.
Exactly.
Knowing your worth.
Knowing your worth and knowing
Right.
that you don't have to take this.
Right.
You know what I mean? There is somebody out there that's going to love you the right way.
Right. And knowing
You
that
know.
being alone is not
It's
being
okay.
lonely. It's not
Exactly.
being lonely.
Big difference.
You're just alone for the moment to get
Exactly.
yourself together, get your
Exactly.
courage up, and get your worth together. And then once you do it and you stop searching for somebody to love
There-
you, that's when
there
somebody will
happens.
show up and be
That's absolutely true.
everything you want.
Absolutely. Absolutely.
At what point, I guess, for a woman, does she say, I don't have to deal with this anymore. I can leave. Or say for a woman who has kids,
Right.
you know, does she gets tired of, putting the kids through, what they're going through, or, she gets tired of them seeing, certain things and, she wants to get them out of, I guess, the situation.
So at what point really depends back to like what we were
Right.
saying, her breaking point, or when
Yes,
she's had
breaking
enough
point,
and she
yes.
has taken those methodical steps that you were saying in her mind. Because, as women, we always want to make sure things are right, especially with our kids. So
Right,
we're always
absolutely
thinking, make
right.
sure everything's are in order, and that, especially a woman who is in an abusive relationship is making sure, okay, if I make this run and make this move, I'm out. I got to make sure everything's in order. So it just really depends. It's situational, for that particular woman, but those things have to be in place. The plan.
Yes.
She has to know that this is enough for her and her kids.
Right.
Mhm.
Some
Somewhere to
women
go.
don't think their kids are really being impacted the way that they are.
Right.
They don't see it, and from that sense, they just think, okay, they may hear this here, but it's not really impacting them because they don't see any true manifestation
Right.
until you see your son rise up and kill somebody
Right.
who's coming near you because he's seen and heard you push around so much
Right.
that this time he has said, I'm done. Enough is enough. I'm not going to let him do this. In his mind, he may have been waiting one more time. He gets up and do this to my mother. I'm taking him out.
Like
So,
even recently,
Exactly.
you've seen on the news where you have this child early in the morning on his way to school.
On the way.
And because his mom is going through, her domestic issues with this man, him and his brother decide that they,
Take defense for their
I want
mom.
to protect their mother.
right. And as a result,
He
then
loses
you got
his life.
you have one who's lost his life, the other one injured in the process. But you're still here as his mom,
Right.
and this man is still here.
Right.
So in your mind, and I'm sure it goes through, as a parent, I didn't protect my child.
Right.
because he's gone.
He is gone.
Ain't no coming back.
And she's still
Right.
in the situation.
Right.
Exactly.
Still
Can't
in the
come back.
situation. Right.
Can't come back.
I mean, very few women will stop the abuse at their children. Like
That's true.
They won't. They'll accept the fact that you will beat on them and everything like that. But once they get to your children, it's
That's
a wrap.
it.
That's it for it.
Welcome back to Breaking the Silence. We want to thank each and every one of our members tonight on this panel for coming out and sharing their stories and giving advice and stuff about domestic violence awareness. Leah, do you have anything?
Does anybody have any advice to give to anybody that can be going through the situation currently? Survivors or anything like that. Just anything to provide to everybody watching.
Well, I think the most important is that if anybody needs or wants help from anywhere, to just seek help. The domestic hotline, it is 1-800-799-SAFE. That is a hotline. It is 24/7. Trained advocates are open to taking calls. They will talk to you. They will try to help you any way that they can. There are,
Awesome.
support groups and everything that you can do it. On my end, Turnaround, that is a big plug for them. Turnaround in Baltimore City, they help out with domestic violence as well. So turnaroundinc.org, check them out.
And I would say to anyone who's in a domestic violence situation to know your value and your worth, that God loves you and he didn't create you to be abused, mistreated, and walked upon, and that find those who really are there to support you, not put you down and make you feel bad about the fact that you have been in it and need to get out.
Absolutely.
If you're in Prince George's County, please call the 211 hotline. There are trained advocates and members of Prince George's County on that line that can get you referrals that you need. Also, you have the House of Ruth in Baltimore and Prince George's County, the state's attorney's office in which I work at as well. That's 301-952-3147. The Sheriff Department and Prince George's County Police has a specialized domestic violence unit. So you don't have to suffer in silence or feel alone.
Yes.
All right. We want to thank each and every one of you for joining us tonight to help us break the silence.